Welcome everyone to the 14th episode of the YA podcast. I'm here with Broden Johnson. He's the founder of Hello Reviews and the Sales Academy. He's achieved such a lot. I recently spoke to him probably 4 months ago at a Young Aussie Entrepreneurs networking event, and since then he's gone on to, I was already impressed with what he's achieved so far, but he's already gone on since then to smash a lot more out of the park. He's now helping people as well with sales training. So I really want to introduce you to him, his journey with sales, marketing, what he's been through to get where he is. He has some really cool stories to share. And I just want to say congratulations to you, Broden, for everything that you have achieved so far. Not many people can say they've gotten to the point that you're at. So thanks for coming on, and I can't wait to dig into your journey.
No, thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. So let's talk about where you started. I read you were 18 years old in a call center selling an $18,000 product. I don't know many people that straight off the bat sell an $18,000 product. Are you able to talk about, if not the company, at least the industry and what sort of product you were selling?
Yeah, by all means. So, when you said not many people can jump straight into doing that, I'll just to start things off. When I first got into sales, I absolutely sucked at it, honestly. I grew up in a small country town in Victoria, and I moved up to the Gold Coast. And, 3 days after I'd finished my high school and got into this job with all these people I didn't know, and I was quite shy. Mm-hmm. And me getting into that sales role, I was told to sell these. There was a sports betting program that I had to try and sell, cold calling people, get them to, sell and buy this product for 20K over the phone, or 18, 20K. And it was a nightmare. Mm-hmm. I went through several months without any sales at all. The only reason I actually kept my job there was that I was the hardest worker. I was always the first one in, the last one out every single day of the week. Mm-hmm. I'd even come in weekends sometimes just to try and get the extra sale, because I really wanted to get a sale, because, it was my first job in the big wide world, but I just couldn't get it. And it got to a point where the boss said, "Look, I love your work ethic, Broden, but I can't keep you here. You haven't gotten a sale yet, and I don't see you getting one anytime soon. So I'm going to demote you into telemarketing. Because, you've got good work ethic." So I sort of went from, I was cold calling in the sales role because I was shit, if I can swear. So they weren't giving me the good leads, but I went down to telemarketing, and then my job went from making, 100 phone calls a day to 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 500 phone calls in a day. And it was just a constant up, down, up, down, up, down. What's your name? What's your number? Getting basic details to give to the sales guys back upstairs, which I was just one of. So it was a bit of a kick in the balls, but I needed that, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you talked about that you were in that role of sales, making 100 plus phone calls a day, and then you got demoted to telemarketing. Whose part do you think that was? Was it the company's fault, or was it some way your responsibility for, were they giving you training, or was that something you felt you had to do yourself?
A bit of both. So the way I got the job was actually from my mentor at the time. So he actually worked there as one of their managers, and he got me the job in the first place. Yeah. And he sort of took me under his wing and tried to train me, but it was only a little bit of training, if you know what I mean. So it was a little bit here and there. It wasn't over the top. So when I got demoted, that was the point where I said to myself, I'm not going to let anyone else decide what I can and can't do. And that was when I took it upon myself to get good at what I needed to get good at. Mm. I knew that I wanted to be in sales, and I'd known that for a long time. So I decided, well, let's get good at sales. So at that point, I started getting up at about 3 o'clock in the morning every morning, and I would just get out of bed, make a 5-shot coffee at the time, and start studying. I'd read books, listen to whatever I could for about 5 or 6 hours. And then by 9 o'clock come around, I'd been up for half a day, and I'd go off to work. I was well and truly up and ready to rock and roll. And before long, I was the number one telemarketer in the company. And another couple of weeks later, I was then promoted to team leader. So my job now was to run the telemarketing team of about 30 people. And I was the youngest one in the office still. Everyone else was 25 plus, up to 40. So it was that point that when I committed to myself that I needed to make the improvements, and I was happy to make the sacrifices to do that, I started to see the results. I didn't, at weekends come around, my mates would be like, hey, you want to come to a party? I'd be like, no, sorry, I've got this and this to do. And I was pretty antisocial, but it paid off in the long run because I was able to commit a lot of time to, developing those skills.
Okay, so you talked about, you go from being demoted to then you getting, doing all the things you did to become team leader and in charge of 30 people. What do you think differentiates you between the older people in the company who have been there for, however many years, they're earning the same income every single year, to you who's, very young, still in your teenage years or getting into the 20s, and within a year and a half, 2 years, you've pushed, or even less, you've pushed yourself from getting demoted and then on an uptrend to then pushing yourself and achieving those results. What's the difference between what you did and everyone else?
It comes down to the attitude. That was the one thing that changed for me. So it was the attitude and the mindset that I told myself. And when I wasn't any good, I thought I had good mindset and I thought I worked hard, but that's all good and well. But I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe I could do the job. I didn't believe I could get the sales, and I didn't believe I could work hard. So the attitude I had towards the actual task was no good. Like, I didn't believe I could do it. So of course my attitude towards it wasn't that great. But it was from that time that I got demoted into telemarketing and then being again promoted to team leader, that was probably only a 2-month period.
Okay,
so
right.
I got demoted, and then 2 months later I'm running the team, because there was that point that I come into work and I would get 2, 3, 4 times as many leads as anyone else in there, and I'd do it in half a day. So it was just that I was prepared to do the work. I wasn't there to mess around and chat and whatever, waste time with other people. I was there to do the job, and I did it well. And I found out what works and what doesn't work and applied it. So it was about having that attitude and consciously being aware of what works and what doesn't work to be able to know what success you want to get to.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about, you were getting a lot more leads than everyone else. And you also just mentioned that you do figure out over time what works and what doesn't work. But there's still got to be people in the organization who have gone through that same experience. They've figured out what works and what doesn't work. What was it about you that allowed you to get 2, 3, 4 times as many leads? Was it that you were just smashing out the phone? You were ballsy enough to not be scared to pick up the phone, because a lot of people are just scared to pick up the phone and make the call. Was it about volume for you or skill that allowed you to achieve better results?
I think it was. I think it come down to the skill.
Okay.
But it's also a fine line. So you've got to, there's efficiency and effectiveness, right? So if you're efficient, you can make heaps of calls, right? I might make 500 calls in a day, but if I'm not effective, then those 500 calls I'm making are pointless. But if I'm just effective, I might have a really big close ratio. But if I'm not efficient, I might only be making 4 or 5 calls.
Right.
So when you say is it one or the other, it comes down to both. So in the beginning, when I started, I was very efficient. I could make lots of phone calls. I could work hard, but I wasn't effective at those phone calls. So when I moved on and I decided to learn the skills, I suddenly became effective and efficient at the same time. And that's when I could do high volume of phone calls, and closing ratio of those phone calls was more. So I think the difference between me and the others in that particular job was I learned how to become efficient and effective, whereas the others, it was just a job. I mean, let's face it, it's telemarketing. No one really likes telemarketing. So they come in for their paycheck at the end of the week. They didn't really care how they performed, and they didn't really care about the bonuses they got. They just came in to pass the day, and that was just a job. So I just looked at it a little bit differently as an opportunity for me to learn and fast track my career.
Yeah, of course. So you talk about these skills that differentiate you from other people. For everyone listening, what are those types of skills? Is it, just about how you handle the customer? Like what was that one skill that differentiated you and shifted, the course of the results you got?
Yeah, no, good point. So to give you a bit of an idea, after I was promoted to team leader, I did that for about another month, and then I was poached into another sales company, back into a sales role, selling the high-end packages again. And my first day there, I got a deal. And what really shifted from only several months before, it was that I had the confidence to do it now. Previous to that, I was scared, I was shy, and I wasn't confident enough to ask for the sale. So although I was getting lots of people on the phone, I was doing an awesome pitch. When it come down to it, if I had to sum it up in a short amount of time, it would be that I wasn't asking the question. I wasn't asking for the deal. So I would get someone that was excited about what I had to offer and they liked it. And then I'd freak out and get nervous and be like, whoa, you actually want to buy? And I'd just stuff it up every time. Because if I'm nervous, they're 100 times more nervous than me. So that was something that I was able to, I guess, develop. Was I had the confidence to ask, and I didn't care whether I got the deal or not. I was prepared to lose the deal if that's what it was going to take, but I was prepared to ask the hard questions that a lot of people weren't prepared to do, and be the direct to the point on what I needed to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you raised, because I've been to a ton of events. I've been, everyone's been sold to before in their life, and obviously with YA we run a number of events. One thing that I have noticed that differentiates the good between the not so is that the people who achieve the great results are fluent in, from when they do their presentation all the way through to the close. Whereas you can tell people who haven't either had much training or haven't been doing it for long, they do a perfect presentation. They know everything about the product. They may do, needs analysis, understand a bit about the customer. But when it comes to asking for the money or, the sale, it's almost like they shit themselves and they just
That's right.
don't know what to do. And so if someone is in that situation, how did you and how can they get out of it?
No, really good question. And it comes down to, a lot of what I speak about, it comes down to your mindset and your attitude. There is a lot of science behind it as well, but it's literally, if you fail to ask, you're going to fail to get the deal. Like if you do not ask for the deal, you're never going to get it. And that's the biggest thing. You'll be surprised at how many people I've seen go through a pitch. They pitch it like you just said, do it really well. They get to the point where it's time to ask for the deal, and then they keep talking, and then they keep selling, and they keep talking more. And suddenly they're talking about all the technical shit that no one even cares about, and they've talked themselves out of a deal because they didn't have the confidence in themselves. So the trick to asking it and closing a deal is asking and being very direct and assertive in yourself when you're doing that. So when you ask for the deal, you don't say, hey, so would you maybe like to come on board? It's great. So let's get you going with this one. And then shut up.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised that shutting up part is so important. Many people will ask and then they'll keep talking, and then again, they're talking themselves out of a deal. But it's ask assertively, ask confidently, and ask direct, and then shut up. Don't say anything. Because if you talk, then you will lose. You won't get the deal. You've got to shut up. And I had a time when I was closing a deal and I asked for the deal just like that. And there was probably 2 or 3 minutes of silence over the telephone. And I could just hear him breathing and thinking in the other end of the phone. And suddenly he goes, all right, Broden, let's get it going. But if I had have said anything in that 2 or 3 minutes, which sounds like a lifetime when you're sitting there on the phone, if you're sitting there silently for 2 or 3 minutes, you're like, are you still there? But just shut up and just keep quiet, because that's what needs to happen. He's thinking about it. And if you say anything at that point, there's a good chance you'll lose the deal.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because something that I was going to bring up, I was doing a bit of research and reading of another sales guy and presenter, and he was saying that, if you can feel that someone's being, they're a bit uncertain or not sure, a lot of people will just tiptoe around the product and or around the situation and keep talking about their products and keep talking and talking. But he goes, the one thing that he does that works so well is if you can sense that they're uncertain, simply ask them, okay, how are you feeling about this, and shut up. And so many people don't do that. What do you think about that as an effective method?
Absolutely. I think that's something you should do throughout your pitch, is ask questions like that, where you can gauge them. And by asking a simple, direct question like that, they are going to give you an answer, and then you can gauge where they're at. So I teach something throughout my sales course called the 300% rule, and it's basically broken down as the product, you, and the company 100% each. So you ask questions like that along the way, and you can gauge where they're at. And the idea is the 300% rule is you've got to get them to 300%. So 100% on you, 100% on your product, and 100% on the company. And when they're there, that's when they're most likely to buy. So you ask questions like you've just said to gauge where they're at on this scale. Because if they love you and they're 100% on you, but they're not 100% on the company, they won't buy. So it sort of gives you an idea that you can say, all right, I need to work a bit more on the company and build up a bit more proof and evidence and speak about that a little bit more, because they already like me. I don't need to talk about myself anymore. I need to build up on this particular point. So it's a really good question to ask, and be direct with it too.
Okay, so I really like that method. I've never actually heard of it before. How do you get someone to like you? Is it just, should you simply just, let's just say it's a cold call, you get on with it, you talk about the products, and you close them into a deal, and you don't really, and the way they understand about you is just your tone and the way you interact with them? Or should you have more of a conversation with them before you even get into pitching the product? How do they get to know you and like you and then trust you?
That's a good question. So there's a few things you can do immediately. It's gonna be from your tonality. So getting into the phone, it's gonna be your tone. And believe it or not, rapport is a widely misunderstood topic, right? Rapport, people think rapport is talking about your dogs and cats and what you do on the weekend, right? That's not rapport. Rapport is built from the get-go throughout your tonality, and being an expert, being, the authoritative in your industry, being enthusiastic, being sharp and quick and confident. Those are the things that build rapport, because when you speak to someone and they know their shit, you immediately like them better. Whereas if someone comes across wishy-washy and, hey, this might help, I don't know, it's not that you just don't naturally gauge towards them as much, and it doesn't help building rapport. So that's one of the things you can do early on in the conversation. But when you're getting towards the end of the conversation, you've done your pitch on your product and you want to gauge them on you, there's what you should do is you should have some language patterns or paragraphs or scripts pre-written about yourself.
Okay.
And have them prepared. So when you get to the point and you're gauging where they're at with you and you feel they don't really know you enough or they don't like you enough, you can then whip out this pre-prepared paragraph or pitch that sounds good, and you've got all your key points in there that are going to build that trust and authenticity, and you can use that each time. So it's really good to have something pre-prepared, because then you know what you're saying, and you can go through that with them and say, hey, this is what I've been doing for this many years, and I really got into this because of X, Y, Z, and this is, so you sort of talk about what you are about. You talk about your why, and that's what people are going to like about you. They're not going to really, talking about your cats and your animals is not really something you need to do throughout a sales pitch. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes a conversation goes that way and they start talking about theirs and that sort of shit, and that's fine. You don't want to interrupt the customer, but you want to grab them and bring them back to the sale and get back on track, because they will respect that out of you. If you waste time talking about shit that's not relevant, then that's how you get out of rapport, because they now don't feel like you respect your own time, let alone their time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, without a doubt. So let's track back a bit. You've gone down, you've come back up, and you're in charge of 30 people. What happens from there? Because I read that you got to the point where you went off on your own and you were earning in excess of $1.2 million a year, and then things kind of crumbled from there. What was that? Can you dig into that a bit more? Because I know a lot of people in the group wanted to hear about that. Yeah,
for sure. So after I left the telemarketing, as I said just a bit earlier, I got poached and went into another sales position, where I was, into selling financial products now. So it was like commodities and foreign exchange and all that sort of shit. So basically it was high-end product, 10, 20, 30, 40K, whatever the product was. And I became really good at that. As I said, first day in, I got a deal. And I stayed with that company for quite some time, probably a couple of years, and managed to get salesperson of the month most months. And it was a few years down the track when I was 21. So I've only been in the big world for 3 years at this stage. But my boss at that time, who I was working for, had said to me, hey, let's go into business. Let's set up something else on the side. You're my best salesperson. Can you come and, run the sales team for the new company? And I thought, this is great. I just had me and my wife were planning to get married next year, so the year after, when I was 22, right? we just had our first daughter. So she was only a few months old at the time. And I thought, this is great, perfect timing. Let's get into it. Started setting things up. And within a month, we had, 10 salespeople. And within a few months, we were doing about 200K a week in sales.
Wow.
Which was cool. We had a nice office overlooking the Broadwater and Gold Coast, full office, like full floor. So everything was going really good. I just bought a new BMW, all that sort of shit. So all the things were lining up, and I thought everything was going great.
Yeah.
And one day, I get a call from ASIC.
Okay.
Say, sorry, Broden, your business partner's been involved in fraudulent activities. And my heart just sunk. I was just like, shit. I didn't run that sort of side of the business. He just got me in and said, look, you just do the sales, you just do what you're good at.
Okay.
The rest.
Yeah.
So it was naivety that really got in there. I should have done more. Unfortunately, I didn't. I just did what I was told at the end of the day. He was the boss. He was the one funding it. He just said, you do that. That's what you're good at. I'll take care of the rest. Don't worry about it.
Cool.
And unfortunately, again, due to naivety, I'd put everything in my name. So I was the sole director. I was the person on the lease. Everything was in my name. He was nowhere to be seen on it. And I didn't think anything of it at the time because, I thought he was a good bloke, obviously.
Yeah.
But that day he virtually disappeared and drained the accounts. I was just stuck. So I was just standing there at work thinking, I don't have a business anymore. I've got 20 staff here who are all looking at their commission, wanting their money, and the lease on the office was about $10,000 a month. It was tax time, so everything sort of built up at that point where I just had to take what I had in savings for the wedding, for the kids, and pay staff off, break leases on bonds on the office, which we lost a lot. I literally just signed that lease a couple of months before and put down a $60,000 bond. So we lost that, and that was it. The business was gone. So it was a big build up, and we were doing really well. And I was earning pretty good coin at the time, but it just came tumbling down all of a sudden because he didn't have anything to do with it. He just took it and ran, and everything was left with me. So I had to clean up the mess, unfortunately.
Okay, so everyone in their life has troubles. The one you've just explained is crazy. How do you, first of all, comprehend a situation like that? Because I know a million things would have been going through your head at the time. What's the process of then getting out of it and recovering from it? Because it's just crazy to understand that people can be, so destructive to others, and for that, individual to do that to you. How do you get yourself out of that situation to be where you are now?
Yeah, no, I get asked that from time to time, and it was a big shitstorm, honestly. And I think what got me through it is, first and foremost, it was tough. I sat around for 2 or 3 or 4 months and didn't do anything. I just sat around. I didn't know what to do. My lawyers are saying, look, you can't work there anymore because what happened? It was just all a big shitstorm. I didn't know what to do. Luckily I had my daughter to hang around with, so I got some really good quality time with her, which I take as a blessing now. So I got to spend a few months at home just with the kids, which was great. But one day I decided I'm not gonna just sit around anymore. I need to get back out there. I need to get back out there and start doing something. So that day I quickly put up my resume together, had a few things on it, just went down to all the real estate shops in the area and said, hey, I'm looking for a job. Didn't even know you needed a real estate license at the time because I'd never done real estate.
Yeah.
And one of them was like, yeah, I like your stuff. Come in for an interview. He's like, you got your license? I'm like, oh, no. Do you need one of them? And he's like, yeah, you do. So I went and got the license, come back, got it in a week, come back and started working, and just jumped into real estate because I know how to sell. That's what I'm good at. I didn't know how to sell real estate, but I thought, how hard could it be? And I think my first day in, I started cold calling people because that's what I knew to do. Everyone else was going out door knocking, but I'm like, all right, well, I know how to cold call. I'm just going to cold call people because I can call more people than I can door knock. And ended up getting a listing in my first day and had property sold within a couple of weeks. So I just jumped straight back in and started getting sales again, and because I had a deadline. My wedding was coming up in a few months, and we'd already paid for most of it, but there was still a pretty big chunk that wasn't paid, and it was a pretty extravagant wedding. So I needed to earn that money to be able to put it into the wedding. So I work well under pressure now, which is cool.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, I'm glad that you talked about pressure. Do people necessarily need that push or that desperation or pressure in their life to be able to make big change, or can you do it without it? Because I know there's a lot of, don't get me wrong, this, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who are doing perfectly fine making millions of dollars online, and they've probably never had that experience, but how important do you think it is to, I guess, succeed in business or a career by having that chip on your shoulder or that push or pressure?
Yeah, good question. I don't think you need it, honestly. Okay. I think something like an event in your life that is like what I've been through, or a major event in someone's life, I think what happens generally is it makes someone change. It forces someone to make a change. That's generally what it goes through. So I don't think you need to go through something like that, but I believe that anyone that's going to aim for success in their life, they're more than likely going to stumble across a failure or two along the way.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any way around that. So that, the 17, 18-year-olds you mentioned that are doing really well now, that's cool. And I hope they never stumble across a failure. But if they keep aiming for bigger and better and constantly striving for that more success, there's probably a chance that sometime in their life, they'll stumble across that failure. And it's about how you react to that failure. If you let it get you down, and you'll never move forward. Mm-hmm. But if you can embrace that failure and move forward and use it to project yourself, I think that's where you'll see the real success.
Yeah.
And I think that the failures are just your stepping stones towards getting to that success.
Okay, so it sounds like that you don't necessarily need that as a driving force, but having those failures, I guess, early, or the downfalls early in your life or career, helps to prepare you for the future, so that when something like that happens in the future, you can kind of already expect it. And I've had those experiences too. I get to the point now where I kind of expect in anything that I do start or going through that shit's going to go wrong. And when I get to that situation, I'm like, yeah, I knew it was coming, so can't complain. And I think that's an important skill. It's probably one of the most important skills to have, actually, because so many people do crumble under pressure. Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with pressure, but I think that's a personal thing. Some people work well under pressure, some people don't. Some people like to have the freedom and just be able to do things at their own pace. Mm-hmm. Whereas just myself, I seem to work well under pressure, and I like to have deadlines because it forces me to do things that otherwise I wouldn't have done.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I want to get back into sales. Now, you said you were making a ton of phone calls, the real estate business and the other two companies that you work for and the one that you own. 70% or thereabouts, the figure is, of deals that close not on the first call, not the second, third, and fourth, but in the follow-up. And even Grant Cardone himself says, the gold is where people don't want to go. The gold is in the follow-up. How important for you, and even to close an $18,000 product, were you finding that you had to call people like a ton of times, or could you simply call someone up and close them the first deal? I don't assume it was that way, but what was that like?
So in my now businesses, I do a lot of follow-up, and I get a lot of deals from following up. I've got people in my database that I've been speaking to for 2.5 years, and my product might be $100 or something. So it's a small product, but some of these people I've been speaking to for years, and it's in the follow-up. Sometimes they'll just say to me, all right, Broden, you've been persistent. What is it you do again? Let's just get it going. And it's purely because of the persistence that I've got it. Okay. I really strongly believe in follow-ups, and I've got systems in place that ensure that not a single person gets through the cracks of the follow-ups. But traditionally, going back to what I originally got into, I learned with cold calling to close a deal on the spot. That's what we were taught to do.
Okay.
Is to make that phone call cold, and we were told to close that person on that first phone call. because the strike rate of getting it after then was next to nothing. So they, the attitude they made us go in with and taught us to do was, if you don't close on your first deal, you're never going to get the deal. So that was something we had to learn, and it was tough because you're promoting such an expensive product that you would go in and you would have to try and close the deal, and sometimes you'd be on the phone for 4 hours trying to close the deal. But I don't think it necessarily has to be done that way anymore. I think that the follow-up is really important, and that's something that I'm more than happy to go through with my customers, because I know I've got a good product, and I've got a good brand, and I know I'm genuinely there to help people. So I'm happy to follow up people now, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because through a lot of these podcasts that I've done already, things that we go through with YA, and a whole range of other things I've done in my life, I've learned that, especially in 2019, relationships, building value, and building that bond with someone is, I guess, the new lead generation. It's not so much anymore that you can put an ad out there and people are going to buy straight away. We often find now that you have to make 20 to 30 points of contact with someone, at least from a digital marketing perspective, and build that relational capital first before you even close the deal. Do you agree with that statement? And is that why you believe follow-up is so gold now, because relationships are the new sale or lead generation?
Yes and no. So I definitely believe in the law of familiarity, and that the more someone is familiar with you, the more likely they are to buy from you. Mm-hmm. And I think that holds merit. I think there's two ways still. I think having, doing that marketing and building that brand is definitely something you should do without a doubt. Yeah. But I think you can still build relationships with customers from a point where, you've cold called them, signed them up, and then you've built the relationship with them. So you can, I think it's a bit of a both. So like my digital marketing agency, I've built mainly from cold calling. I've closed hundreds of clients from cold calling, and most of those clients I consider, some of them mates, because they've been with me for a long time, and we talk all the time about it. But in the beginning, they didn't necessarily know who I was, especially because it was a new company and no one had heard of me. It was that I didn't have a choice. I had to do it that way because I didn't have a massive, well-known brand. So I picked up the phone and just started dialing and started getting deals in. Whereas now I still do that, but on the other side of the stone, I've got a brand where people recognize it, and I get referrals every day of the week. So it's a bit of a both, and it's because I was working on both at the same time. Whereas I could get the now business by cold calling, and I could work on the later business by building a brand and doing really good service for my customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from what I've seen that you've done, I think, the content that you put out on Facebook and everything that I see and everything you've said in this podcast, it's becoming clear to me that, unlike a lot of other salespeople, what you do is you get people to believe on their vision and their goals, not your own. I mean, too many salespeople just try and talk too much about the product, say what it's, just talk so much shit, but you actually go in there and get people to believe on what they want from their future, that this product's going to help them do, not what it's, about to you. Is that important? Getting people to believe on things on their terms?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the way I look at it, people don't really give a shit about me. They don't really give a shit about my product or my company. Yeah. Those are important parts, and I'll come back to that in a sec. But straight off the bat, people care about themselves. Yeah. What's in it for them? WIIFM. What's in it for them? Or what's in it for me? WW. Whatever. So you have to always have that in your mind. Is that's what your client's thinking. They're thinking every single time you speak, what are they getting from it? Yeah. And that's how you sell. They don't care what your goals are and all that sort of shit, all right? Yeah. They want to know what's in it for them. And if you can build that up and get them to believe that you can provide them the dream and the painting and, the vision that they've got, then that's how they'll buy. Because people buy emotionally and they justify with logic. So you've got to be able to come up with an airtight case for both emotional and logical point of view, because they'll buy emotionally, but they need to understand the logic behind it. But it's about doing it in the right order, in the right way. So just to touch on it really quickly, you build an emotional case through the tonality of your voice and the stories you tell throughout your pitch, and logically are the words you're saying. So it's a bit of a science, and there's a lot to get used to, but there's some really cool stuff you can learn to be able to improve those sales skills and be able to get people to immediately have that instant rapport and trust everything you're saying throughout what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously the customer journey is important. I mean, a lot of these podcasts I've been on with, other industry experts, they talk about how important the customer journey is. Is it something that you do and make sure, because I know you just put a video out recently about upsells. A lot of people, especially in e-commerce, I see this too, people go for that initial sale, they spend $20 on Facebook ads, they get a $60 sale, whatever the case may be, and then they're on to the next Facebook ad sale. They completely forget about that customer that's just bought from them. In sales, is something that you do is, you've called someone, cold called, you've made the sale. Are you then continuing the process all the way through them going through and using that product, and then maybe even once they're finished with the product, you're still making contact with them?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want you to touch on that a bit, because I think that's really important, just continuously going for it with them.
Yeah. And it's just you've got to be able to, what I do is I map out my sales process. So I'll get a whiteboard and map out what the process looks like. And that way I know that on my first phone call, my goal is to purely book an appointment for me to chat with them again. That's the first step. So I'm not trying to close a deal on the first one. Yeah. So I know that I can provide heaps of value, give out that enough information. They're curious, but not enough that they're not going to show up to the meeting. And then my next phone call, I know that I'm probably going to close on my next phone call. So yeah. I know that's my outcome. So I do that. In that video I was saying earlier today that I put up was the upsell is know what you can upsell to. If you've got a product or service that goes well with what you're doing, and in my case, in the digital marketing, I've got 2 or 3 or 4 products that I can offer. So I went into a meeting this morning with the intention, I'd booked the meeting to speak to him about reviews, but he ended up buying reviews, Google Ads, and social media management all at once. So I got him sold on the first product because that's what the objective was. Once he was sold on that and he liked that, I said, well, look, we also do this and this and this. Let's have a look at that too. And then, half an hour later, I walked out of that meeting with doing all the services for him. He's over the moon. He's happy. But the process doesn't finish there either. It's then about providing, excellent service. So back yourself up. If you say you're the best at what you do, you've got to come forward with that and do that excellent work and make sure that you're giving that customer the best possible service you can, because that's how you then get referrals. So as I said, I get referrals most days of the week now because I do a really good job at what I'm telling them I'm going to do. And they're happy with it, that they tell their friends and families about me. I get mentions at conferences around different industries that they should be using me. And I'm able to, I've got good connections with some franchise groups around Australia where I do it for their whole entire franchise group. And it's just about having that good service and being able to put your money where your mouth is effectively. Mm-hmm. But on that point, it's also about expectations. And I think that's a really important point to touch on, because a lot of people get wrong. They set your expectations with your client. So just an example is when I'm finishing up with a client and I've sold them, I will then go through what's next, and I'll let them know it's going to be 24, 48 hours before such and such happens. It's going to be 3 to 4 days before such and such happens. And I'll let them know. So in this amount of time, this is going to be happening. It just lets them know that, all right, I know what's happening next. And it doesn't mean it stops that in a week's time when nothing's happened, for example, and you didn't tell them, they're calling you saying,
remorse.
Because exactly, buyer's remorse. They're coming back to you and going, hey, Broden, what's going on? I haven't heard anything for a week. Like, what the hell? I paid you and now you're not doing anything. And it's like, well, no, because if you set that expectation, you say, I'll call you in a week, then they won't wonder what's happening because they know that they're getting a call in a week. So set those expectations and make, in some cases, set your expectations a little bit lower so that way you can overachieve. So tell them you might achieve this and this, but know that you can achieve this and this. And when they get these results, they're bloody over the moon, and they just, they love you for it. So don't oversell your product and underachieve, undersell your product and overachieve.
Okay, I think, I actually really like that point. Now, just on that, is transparency part of it too? Because for example, I have a family friend who runs a brick and mortar shop. He sells furniture. Every single day he gets cold called, he gets emailed by people wanting to do SEO and digital marketing, all those services, and he says no to all of them. There was this one guy who he ended up, after months of being contacted, he gets on a call with this one guy, and the guy says, look, he's kind of set the expectation straight away. He said, look, we can do this, this, and this for you. We'll fix your website, SEO, all those sorts of things. It's worked for, our other clients in these industries. It can work for you. We can't guarantee that it will, but if it doesn't work for you, then there's no point of us doing business together. And he kind of closed the deal that way because he was upfront, transparent about the expectations and the goal of the job. Is that something you go about doing, or would you do it differently?
No, I do agree where you're coming from. I think what you mentioned on there was a few different things at once. And this guy getting lots of phone calls every day. Everyone, like a lot of business owners, get telemarketing calls every single day, and 99% of them get hung up on.
Yeah.
To get that point of difference, to touch on that point first, it's about what you do in that first few seconds. I get through a lot of phone calls where I'll be pitching and I'll be half an hour in or closing the deal, and he'll be like, you know what, I get like 7 of these phone calls a day, and I've never let any of them actually pitch me before. And now I'm signing up with you. And I'll get that a lot of the time. And it's just about being different and disrupting that introduction. Don't be like everyone else. Speak to them like they're your mate. But setting expectations and being transparent is really important, because if you go into someone and you're going into a pitch and you're like, I guarantee you this, I guarantee you this, I guarantee you this, that's all good and well. But people have limiting beliefs, and they've got these things that when they hear the word guarantee in some regard, not all the time, but in some regard, they might think, oh, that sets off a little alert in their head, and they go, scam, or something like that, because he's guaranteeing me the world, and he's guaranteeing me this, and it's over much. But if you almost take it back and be honest, look, this is what I can do. This is what I've done for customers before. Yes, your results may differ because that's how it works. But I can tell you now that I'm 100% confident that I'm going to be able to do this for you, because we've done it lots of times before. We're good at what we do, and I'm going to give you everything I can to make sure that I can get you to those results. So it's just about backing yourself in a way that is believable and transparent and honest. Because if someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer to it, don't make it up. Be honest to them and say, hey, it's a good question. I don't actually know. Let me find out for you. They'll appreciate that more than you're bullshitting them, because they know that you're a real person and you're trying to do your best, which is what people want.
And is part of that sometimes actually saying no to a sale? Like actually getting yourself that far down, in the process of pitching someone, presenting, and then saying, okay, well, I actually don't think that we're perfect for each other. Is that important? Because I think that could then lead, builds up a lot of trust if you're saying no to someone. And then, you could get referrals and those sorts of things later in the future. Is that something you would suggest? Yeah,
spot on. Absolutely. If you only sell to someone that you honestly believe you can help, if you do not see that you can help them, then don't sell them, because it's only going to cause troubles, and you're going to have to, in most cases, if you're going to do that, you're going to be oversetting your expectations and you're going to be underachieving. So they're not going to be happy with your service. And I do it all the time in my business, that if I know I'm going through a pitch for someone and they're already doing X, Y, Z and they're getting really good results, and I don't feel like I can do it better, I'll say, no worries. I'll be honest with them. I'll be like, great, if you're already doing that, honestly, it's not worth the money switching over to do it with me, because then we're going to go through a period where we're going to have to set up and all this sort of stuff. And I might say, but a few things you are missing out on is you can actually do this, this, and this. It's not going to cost you any money to do that. But if you like, I'm happy to quickly run you through what you can do, because if you do these three things that you're not currently doing, it'll actually improve your results. And I'll spend time going through with them, even if I've just told them I'm not going to take them as a client, and they'll appreciate that. It's the law of reciprocity. So if you are doing something for someone, then in turn, generally something will happen in return. But it's kind of funny. You don't do it for that purpose. You don't do it for someone to get something in return. You just do it because you want to run a good business.
Ethical, yeah.
But if you do those things and you're able to turn people away and only take on the people you genuinely know to help, then it'll come around in a roundabout fashion somewhere back to you.
Mm. So just on that, how do you set yourself up in your business for referrals? Not to the point, I mean, obviously, I'm not sure if you still cold call in your business, but how do you set yourself up to the point where people are coming in droves to you and banging down the door to give you money for your service?
No, good question. I could probably be doing more when it comes to the referral side of stuff. I still make calls from time to time, as many as I can. And I think there's still a lot of opportunities to be made out there. But I suppose my business is at a point where it is a lot of referral based. And I just ask. It's just about asking again. So when I'm signing a client up, I'll say, hey, do you know anyone else that could benefit from this? Absolutely. Yeah, I know this guy, this guy, this guy. Great. What are their numbers? I'll give them a call and just ask. Or touch base in a month's time when they've seen some cool results and be like, and just ask the same question. You could definitely set up more automation behind it, but one of the things that makes my business a little bit different to others, in my opinion anyway, is that I am on the phone to my customers all the time personally. They can call me on my mobile number at any time, and I'm there to help them out. And I like to have that personal touch with them. They only get if I sign them up, I'll speak with them, I'll deal with them across the board and everything. And I think that's something that I like to do because that helps with referral. And again, it's about providing that good service, setting those expectations. And a lot of my customers will come to me because I'm just providing a good service. And it's a good value, it's a good service, everything about it they like. So they're happy to tell their friends about it. They're happy to tell their colleagues about it. But definitely ask.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, to wrap things up, I want to know, you talked about when you first got into business at 18, 19, you were getting up at 3 a.m. Has that routine still carried through to where you are now? Like, what is your routine? Because I think it's a bit of a misconception. People think that you should be working 22 hours a day, and I think that's important at the start. What does your routine look like, and is it still the same as back then, or have you optimized and adjusted certain things that you do?
Yeah, I had this conversation with someone the other day. I think you have to be able to hustle especially in the beginning, and you have to be able to do what it takes. My routine now definitely doesn't look like that. I've got 2 kids now who keep me up enough at night as it speaks. So I'm definitely not waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, considering I was probably already up at 3 o'clock changing a nappy or something. So having kids has disrupted that routine for me, definitely, because I just can't sustain it because I'm waking up so many times in the night already.
Yeah.
So I still get up early though. My kids still wake me up at 5:30, and I get up and get out and get ready for the day and go to the gym and still do all those things because I think they're important. And a lot of my work will now come in the evening. So I'll try and have downtime with the kids and spend time with the wife and that sort of thing. But if work needs me to, I'll come home, do that stuff with the kids, have a bit of time with the wife. And then once she's in bed, I'll pull open the laptop and I'll keep working through then. So I think it's about adjusting to your lifestyle and where you're at in life. So when I was 18 and 19, I didn't have any worries, right? I could wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go to bed at midnight. And it didn't really matter because it was just me. So I could do that. But I think once I had a family and I've got kids and whatnot, I had to adjust because I need to still have a decent amount of sleep to function. But occasionally, and a lot of the time, if I need to, I'll work the extra hours and I'll do what it takes when I need to get there. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So it's more or less just adjusting, as things change and as you progress. I really like that.
Yeah. So don't take your foot off the pedal. Like if you're in a good momentum, then you don't want to slack off and stop working. So running your own business, as you know, it takes a lot of dedication to keep going. And sometimes, you don't want to whip open a laptop at 10 o'clock at night and work for 2 hours until midnight, but sometimes you've got to be able to do that. And that's what's going to differentiate and make the difference between success and not.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. One thing that I have noticed with myself over the past few months, and I see in other people, is that there's a big shift between people like you who are pushing and achieving massive results and those that don't. And I think the key difference is that when someone achieves the result, generally they take their foot off the pedal. They'll, if it's something they're doing on their computer, they'll get up and go walk off and go on their phone or something. Or they'll go out and celebrate, go to a club, whatever it is. But I think the guys who keep getting results are the ones that when they achieve a result, they keep pushing for the next result. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to never celebrate your wins, because I think that's important. But I think when you have momentum, keep snowballing and getting, building that snowball up and up and up. Because the second you take your foot off the pedal, you're starting back from base zero.
Spot on. And that's something I learned throughout sales, is that when you get a sale, like when I closed a big deal and I'm getting a 10K commission, that would be the time that I wouldn't celebrate right then. I know I'm going to do it later, but I will get straight back on the phone. I'll pick up that phone and start dialing again, because that excitement from me just closing that deal and making 10 grand, I'm going to pick up the phone and do that again. And sometimes I'll do it again and again and again. I do it 4 times in a day because of that excitement. Whereas a lot of people will do it once, go out and have a beer and come and or that whatever. And that's why their careers are like a roller coaster, because they get a deal, then they take a break, and then they get a deal and they take a break, and it's just a constant roller coaster ride. Whereas if you focus and you keep that momentum going and eliminate distractions when you are on that roller, when you're on that train upwards, just ride it out as far as you can. Use that momentum to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. So Broden, to wrap this up, I want to know, on top of what you've already achieved so far, what are your goals for the next 12 months? And then I guess your 5-year goals as well. Is it just to keep expanding the company you have? Are you jumping into completely new industries or new waters, new ventures? What's your plans?
No, so the goal is sort of to focus mainly on the 2 businesses I've already got. So I really want to be able to expand Hello Reviews even more by expanding the team. So that's what I'm doing over the next few weeks, is we're expanding that team even more, which is going to be great. And I want that to keep growing to a point where it's doing really well. We can help out as many people as possible. Yep. But on the other side of the stone of my other company, the Sales Academy, I want to be able to grow that even further. And I've been accumulating some really good content that, all my sales skills that I've learned over the past close to 10 years, I've sort of funneled it into that Sales Academy, and that's what that's all about. Yeah. So in the next 12 months, I want to be doing a lot more of that, and ideally running some events and some boot camps and some training sessions where I can just help as many people as possible learn the stuff that I've learned that's got me to, through the stuff I've been able to do. And that's sort of where I want to be there. I've got another couple of little side hustles that, I'm working on in the background, which hopefully they're all going to be good as well. But the main 2 companies are the Sales and Hello. So they can be really skyrocketing in the next 12 months, even more. That'd be brilliant. Yeah,
love that, man. It's really been awesome having you on. Just before we go, where can people find out more about you, Hello Reviews, the Sales Academy, if they want to learn more about you or just have a chat?
Yeah, by all means. So the Hello Reviews is just helloreviews.com.au. So jump on there, check out what we do if you like. Feel free to reach out. Otherwise, the Sales Academy is the salesacademy.com.au. Otherwise, the social is at the Sales Academy Co. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, if you want to follow me personally, I'm at Broden Johnson 1. You can jump on there and I put things in there. Reach out. I'm always down for a chat. If you've got any sales questions, queries, or just want tips or anything like that, give me a call, and I'd love to be able to just go through and nut out some things with you. That's what I'm all about, and I love doing that sort of thing. So I'm all ears.
Perfect. Love it, man. It's been great having you on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Reece. Thanks for having me.